Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here are today's top stories. The Supreme Court punts on Florida and Texas social media laws, sending the cases back to the lower courts. After weeks of waiting, the Supreme Court today rules that former President Trump can get immunity for official acts, but not for unofficial acts. What Trump had to say about the decision, Arleen Richards reports. President Biden and former President Trump back on the campaign trail after last week's debate. Plus, the White House reacts to rumors about Biden's re-election bid. First up, free speech takes center stage in a case before the Supreme Court today. The High Court sent the cases back to the lower courts in a unanimous decision. Lawsuits have challenged the legality of Florida and Texas laws aimed at stopping social media companies from curbing content the platforms see as objectionable. The laws were challenged by tech industry trade groups like NetChoice, whose members include companies like Meta and Google. The tech industry argues the laws interfere with the editorial discretion of social media companies. At issue is whether the First Amendment prohibits governments from forcing companies to publish content against their will. The companies have said their websites would be overrun with spam and hate speech if they couldn't block or remove content or users. Many Republicans have argued that the platforms stifle conservative voices under the guise of content moderation, calling it censorship. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon is due to report to prison today to serve a 4-month sentence. He was convicted for defying a congressional subpoena related to the January 6 Capitol breach investigation. The sentence could keep Bannon imprisoned almost to Election Day. That would make it difficult for the War Room podcaster to communicate with his fans. Bannon on Friday lost a last-ditch effort to stay out of prison. The Supreme Court rejected his request to delay his sentence while he exhausts the appeals process for his conviction. He was convicted in 2022 of 2 misdemeanor counts of contempt of Congress. He was charged after refusing to turn over documents or testify to a House committee investigating the Capitol breach. A life-threatening and very dangerous situation is developing across the southern Windward Islands in the Caribbean. Category 4 Hurricane Beryl hit land this morning and is expected to bring catastrophic wind damage and a life-threatening storm surge. The National Hurricane Center announced that residents must take action to keep themselves safe and advised those in Grenadine Islands and Carriacou Island not to leave their shelters. The residents have been warned to stay inside throughout the duration of the dangerous situation and not to venture out in the eye of the storm. Top California Democrats have unveiled the plan to crack down on retail theft. They aim to place the measure on the November ballot to compete with another crime-focused proposal backed by business groups. Both proposals would include making shoplifting a felony for repeat offenders and increase penalties for fentanyl dealers. Under the plan from business groups, any prior theft-related convictions, even if they happened years ago, would count toward a 3-strike policy for increased sentences. Under the plan by Democrats, the conviction would have to happen within 3 years of each other. The proposal by business groups would also make possession of fentanyl a felony. It would authorize judges to force those with multiple drug charges to get treatment. Democratic lawmakers say the change would disproportionately incarcerate low-income people and those with substance use issues. Today, the Supreme Court has ruled that the former President Trump has immunity for some of his alleged conduct, but maybe not all of it. Our legal correspondent Arleen Richards has more.
In a 6-3 decision on Monday, the Supreme Court ruled that former presidents have absolute immunity, which means that former President Trump may get immunity for his official acts in the D.C. election case. However, the majority rejected Trump's broad claim of immunity, saying he does not have immunity for unofficial conduct. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing the opinion for the court, said determining whether a prosecution should continue requires a careful assessment of a president's constitutional powers. He wrote, "The nature of that power requires that a former president have some immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office, at least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers. This immunity must be absolute." He said the government would have to show that prosecuting a former president would not interfere with the functions of the executive branch. All three liberal justices dissented, blasting the majority's decision. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote in her dissenting opinion that the decision reshapes the institution of the presidency. She added that the Constitution does not shield a former president from criminal and treasonous acts. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, writing her own dissent, said the majority's decision broke new and dangerous ground. Departing from the traditional model of individual accountability, the majority has concocted something entirely different, a presidential accountability model that creates immunity, an exemption from criminal law, applicable only to the most powerful official in our government, she said. Shortly after the decision was published, Trump posted on Truth Social, "Big win for our Constitution and democracy, proud to be an American." President Biden's campaign said the ruling didn't change what happened on January 6th. Donald Trump snapped after he lost the 2020 election and encouraged a mob to overthrow the results of a free and fair election, the advisor said. The Chief Justice argued that the dissent accuses the majority of deeming the president above the law. He wrote, "As for the dissents, they strike a tone of chilling doom that is wholly disproportionate to what the court actually does today." The court sent the case back to District Judge Tanya Chutkan for further proceedings. Judge Chutkan will have to decide which of the alleged acts were official and which were not. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Arleen Richards, NTD News.
Republican lawmakers call for an end to the prosecution of former President Trump after the Supreme Court rules in favor of presidential immunity for official acts. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
Minutes after the Supreme Court announced its decision on presidential immunity, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer took to social media to criticize the ruling. The Democratic senator rebutted the court, saying treason or incitement of an insurrection should not be considered a core constitutional power afforded to a president. Schumer also added that the decision undermines the court's credibility, while House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries condemned the ruling and argued that the framers of the Constitution did not intend for our nation to be ruled by a king or monarch who could act with absolute impunity. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez posted on social media that she intends to file articles of impeachment against Supreme Court justices, while Republicans celebrated the ruling. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson posted on social media that the decision was a victory for former President Donald Trump and for all future presidents, and that the decision was based on the obviously unique power and position of the presidency and comports with the Constitution and common sense. Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, also highlighted that hyper-partisan prosecutors like Jack Smith cannot weaponize the rule of law to go after the administration's chief political rival. House Republicans expect the decision to put pressure on Special Counsel Jack Smith and on the Department of Justice to put an end to investigations against former President Donald Trump, while House Democrats have signaled that they're willing to use the powers of the legislative branch to redress their grievances surrounding the Supreme Court. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Biden and former President Trump were on the campaign trail this weekend after their debate. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin came out to support Trump for the first time ever. President Biden's re-election campaign says it's raised more than $33 million since last week's debate. Meanwhile, the White House reacted to rumors surrounding Biden's re-election campaign. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the presidential race.
President Biden, after last week's presidential debate, said he intends to win re-election in November.
I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
Biden told supporters in North Carolina Friday the stakes are too high. He says he can do the job.
Biden, I would not be running again if I didn't believe with all my heart and soul I can do this job.
The White House on Saturday denied Biden had visited Camp David on the weekend to talk to family about the future of his re-election campaign. Biden's trip to the presidential retreat was scheduled a week before last week's debate. Administration officials said the Biden family would be taking a family photo. This after NBC News cited 5 anonymous sources, saying the president was meeting with family members to decide whether to continue or end his campaign. White House Senior Deputy Press Secretary Andrew Bates said NBC hadn't asked for comment about it at all. He posted on X he hopes standards aren't in decline.
Okay, Virginia.
Meanwhile in Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin stumped for former President Trump for the first time ever. Trump on Friday said he doesn't believe Biden would drop out of the race.
He does better in polls than any of the Democrats they're talking about. You've seen that, Glenn.
Both Biden and Trump's campaigns increased fundraising efforts after the debate, reaching out to voters with messages and emails. The Trump campaign says it raised $8 million on debate night. The Biden campaign says it raised $33 million since the debate, with nearly 80% coming from grassroots supporters. A CNN flash poll found about 80% of registered voters who watched the debate said it wouldn't change their vote. 14% said it made them reconsider, but didn't change their view. Only 5% said the debate impacted their opinions on who to vote for in November. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. Florida homeowners can now remove squatters legally, as a new law Governor DeSantis signed earlier this year takes effect starting today. 4th of July is in a few days, with high heat expected in a forecast. Officials give tips for staying safe whether watching fireworks or traveling. A new blockbuster has stormed the box office, joining the exclusive billion-dollar club in record time. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. A recent Florida bill expanding state law enforcement's authority to evict squatters and increase penalties for offenders goes into effect today. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
Governor Ron DeSantis signed HB 621 in March to tackle the problem of squatters and strengthen homeowner protection. The new law allows for squatters to be charged with trespassing and presenting false documents. The bill,
which will give the homeowner the ability to quickly and legally remove a squatter from a property, and which will increase criminal penalties for squatting.
The bill aims to empower homeowners to safeguard their properties without enduring prolonged and expensive legal procedures.
What the squatters know is even when they're in the wrong, it's a massive process many times before they can be evicted, and a lot of times the process is very expensive.
Squatters in states like New York and California have become a prolonged issue, lasting for several months for some homeowners. According to attorney Kevin Fabricant, addressing this problem can be costly, beginning with a $300 filing fee and often requiring expensive legal representation. If you're a victim of squatting,
you can simply fill out a form, give it to your local sheriff, and the sheriff is instructed to go and remove the people who are inhabiting your dwelling illegally.
The Florida Sheriff's Association shares the importance of backing this bill.
Squatters actually is a very, very kind term. These are criminals and con artists that need to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Sheriffs from across the state will be able to provide the adequate resources and support for victims of these crimes and homeowners to preserve their property.
This new law takes effect Monday, July 1st.
You are not going to be able to commandeer somebody's private property and expect to get away with it. We are in the state of Florida ending the squatter scam once and for all.
Christina Corona, NTD News.
California is known for its sanctuary cities and for people experiencing homelessness. The rise in the number of unhoused people in California continues to grow. However, one city in California has managed to turn the tide. NTD's Bill Thomas brings us more.
Since 2016, the number of people living on the streets has been rising steadily in Los Angeles. The city has spent a great deal of time, effort, and tax money in an attempt to combat homelessness, but the momentum appeared to be unstoppable. However, when Karen Bass was elected mayor of Los Angeles in 2022, she began working diligently to address the homeless crisis, and today, for the first time in 6 years, the numbers are beginning to change for the better.
These numbers represent a change in the trajectory of our entire city and our entire region, and it is a new direction for Los Angeles, and a part of that new direction is new leadership.
To Mayor Bass, this isn't only about saving people on the street. It's that and so much more.
It's also about keeping customers from being driven away from small businesses and restaurants. It's about keeping and attracting office tenants and large employers. It's about making sure kids can walk to school and people can walk their dogs without having to step around encampments. It's about making sure people have roofs over their head instead of seeking refuge in our parks, our libraries, and our metro system.
The mayor says Los Angeles should not follow the recent high court's ruling, which allows for the criminalization of people who are sleeping outside, even when they have no other safe place to go.
You can't solve homelessness in LA without solving homelessness in LA County. And so we're going to continue to work together and not allow, because the Supreme Court made this unfortunate decision, that now we change our strategies. We're not going to do that.
Regarding the Supreme Court's decision to allow cities to ban homeless people from sleeping on the streets, Mayor Bass doesn't believe that approach will fundamentally help the crisis surrounding the unhoused.
Giving people tickets and punishing them, and how are they supposed to pay for their ticket? And what happens when they don't pay? Does it go into a warrant and now it gives us an excuse to incarcerate somebody? These are failed responses.
While the mayor clearly believes in helping homeless individuals regardless of where they come from, she does take issue with officials from other cities and states bringing their unhoused individuals to Los Angeles.
Governor of Texas has tried to do that with migrants. I did just come back from a meeting at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and mayors all around the country are worried about this decision, and I can only hope that none of them would resort to shipping people out of town.
Following the mayor's 2-year-long efforts, homeless numbers in Los Angeles are no longer on the rise. Currently, the number of homeless in the City of Angels is just over 45,000 people, about a 2% decrease from last year. Bill Thomas and Jimmy Ma, NTD News, Los Angeles.
It's that time of the year, and approximately 75% of fireworks-related injuries happen around July 4th, according to Santa Clara County in California. NTD's David Lamb reports.
With 4th of July coming up, people will be celebrating Independence Day, but first responders in the county are concerned that fires would spark damaging homes and landscapes such as this. So that's why one of the county supervisors have been reminding people year after year on how to enjoy fireworks safely.
So please go to the website to be able to observe fireworks so that you're not doing them yourselves.
In terms of illegal fireworks, these are mortars, small pieces of dynamite. These can and will blow off your fingers and your hands. We see these every year. Unfortunately, these types of injuries are not repairable in most circumstances.
A medical leader said when enjoying outdoor celebrations, be sure to plan accordingly this week, as much of the U.S. is expected to be above 80 degrees leading up to July 4th.
Utilize sunscreen, wear light and loose-fitting clothing, stay hydrated with water or low-sugar sports drinks to avoid heat-related illnesses.
Here's what locals tell NTD.
They just like to celebrate because fireworks and 4th of July kind of go hand in hand. I guess if you're being responsible with them, I think it's fine.
They have these drone displays, so they fire up 1,000 drones, and they're all synchronized, and they have this beautiful visual display. You could actually have speakers doing the bomb, the boom and so forth, and pop.
Many agencies have events with professionals that take care of the fireworks.
I don't like them. Not good for the pets, not good for all the noise pollution, plus the air pollution. All I see is negative. Maybe little kids may like some fireworks, but other than that, I don't like it.
I personally love them, but it needs to be done in a safer way and kind of where it's permitted to happen. Because I know in San Jose and San Francisco in particular, there's a lot of people who find their own fireworks and set them off in like really dense areas, and that is not great in my opinion.
Different states and regions have varying laws on which types of fireworks are legal or not. So check with your state's fire marshal office for the latest information. David Lamb, NTD News.
The newly released Inside Out 2 has become the fastest animated feature ever to surpass the $1 billion mark at the global box office. NTD's Christina Corona shares more details on the movie.
Pixar's Inside Out 2, directed by Kelsey Mann, reached over $1.01 billion in just 19 days as of Sunday. According to Disney, which owns Pixar, the film is the highest-grossing movie of the year and the only one to cross the $1 billion threshold. Inside Out 2 is a sequel to the 2015 hit that explores the inner workings of a young girl's mind. In this second installment, the lead character Riley is now a teenager dealing with new emotions such as anxiety and envy. The original Inside Out debuted with approximately $90 million in its first weekend during the summer of 2015, eventually grossing $858.8 million globally. The 19-day race to $1 billion places Inside Out 2 alongside live-action hits like 2017's Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which hit $1.04 billion in 19 days, and 2023's top-grossing Barbie, which reached $1.03 billion in 19 days. However, the fastest film to reach $1 billion was Avengers: Endgame in 2019 in just 5 days. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. A dramatic rescue as record flooding hits southern China. A whopping 98 rivers have swelled past their warning levels, and the water is still rising. Officials say the situation will soon get worse. More on China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.